right. Hey everyone, it is Jessica Gordon, and I'm coming to you with another video. This one is a little different where I'm going to show and share the 5 books that have helped change my life. Now, I don't want you to think that there are not other books. I just wanted to start with 5 to give a smaller list to give you an opportunity to read a few so that we can have some conversation. But I love to read. I don't read as much as I used to when I was younger or when I didn't have kids. I had a lot more free time and I did read a lot. So now I spend a lot of time when I'm driving. I listen to audiobooks because that's just my thing. I really enjoy books, but when I really love a book, I always go get a hard copy. And so here are 5 books that have really made a huge impact in my life. As I mentioned, there are more, but we're just going to talk about these 5 today. So I'm going to start off with Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover Twop. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but it's a guide to reclaiming yourself. And you all, there's just so many things I can say about this book. The first thing I'm gonna tell you is that I have 2 copies, okay? 2, because that's how much I needed it, because I wanted it to be in a space where I could find it. As a child of a parent with a serious mental illness and my dad not really being in my life, I didn't really understand boundaries. I never really had anyone tell me what to do. Due to my mother's illness, she kind of let me do whatever I wanted to do. Growing up, I did have my grandparents, my grandma, my granddad, but my grandfather passed when I was 6 years old. And that was the last time that I had lived with a man, you all. So boundaries, discipline, I was never on punishment. I never got a whooping. May not be your situation, but for someone like me who didn't know what boundaries were, like I truly lived in a house with 2 other women growing up, my grandmother and my mother. So it wasn't like, oh, you need to go put on clothes because there's a man here. My grandmother never remarried. My mom never got married. So there were just things that I didn't know and didn't understand. And it impacted my friendships and relationships. Even she goes into detail about honoring your boundaries at work, honoring your boundaries in relationships. She talks about how trauma impacts your relationships, how to identify your boundaries and communicate your boundaries. That was something I really struggled with. If you watch my other videos, you know that it was hard for me to tell guys that I wanted something serious. I was always fun. I wanted to go with the flow. And identifying and communicating my boundaries was so important because it allowed me to be able to articulate, this is what I want and this is what I desire. And to say it with my whole chest, like say it with your chest, little ass nigga. Like I had to say some things with my chest that I didn't always say because I was afraid to hurt people's feelings or afraid that I would lose someone if I told them how I truly felt. So this book is so beneficial. It even goes into what boundary violations look like, because sometimes we're so used to it because those that love us the most in our lives, be it our mom, our dad, our brothers, sisters, sometimes they always have violated those boundaries and we don't even know. And so she goes into details about even racial bias and how you can set a boundary with those people in the office and their microaggressions. She talks about the different types of boundaries. So of course, physical boundaries. A lot of us know, like, if I don't want you to touch me, don't touch me. But you may see a lot now where people are encouraging people not to make their kids hug and kiss on people. Like I know I grew up in a time where if somebody say give them a hug, you give them a hug. Thankfully, I wasn't around a lot of perverts, or didn't know they probably was. Who knows? Neither here nor there. But those physical boundary violations, I remember growing up in the church being told, give him a hug, give her a hug. And if you don't want to be touched, you don't have to be touched. And so I see a lot of that now, and I'm so thankful for that. Just their intellectual boundaries, sexual boundaries. I could go on and on and on and on. She talks about the cost of not having boundaries, but what are you going to do to honor your boundaries? Do you know what they are? I highly recommend you tapping into this book. This is a winner, okay? The second book that I would recommend that truly made an impact in my life, this is one of those ones that you are going to read over and over again. I have probably read this one 3 times. I am going to read it again. It's something that's always going to stay with me. So this is The 4 Agreements. And it's a book about wisdom. Don Miguel Ruiz, he wrote it. And we have self-limiting beliefs. And this book really points out there's just 4 agreements and things that we often take for granted, and kind of we do it so naturally depending on, because of how we were raised. So if your parents, like for example, I want to give you an example directly from the book. The second agreement is don't take anything personally. I'm a person that takes shit personal. Like if someone does something to me, if someone's like rude, or I may perceive something the wrong way, this book talks about don't take anything personally. And you all, it just changed my life, because a majority of the time, the things that people are doing, you all, don't even have your name on it. You taking it personal, thinking it got something to do with you, when it's all to do with them. I'm telling you, the 4 agreements it's called A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom. Okay, this is a practical guide to personal freedom, and I 100% agree. Being impeccable with your word. I'm not going to tell you all the agreements, because I would love for you to come back and have actually read this one. But as I mentioned, although I know not to take things personally, because this book truly did change my life, the reason why I've already read it 3 times is because as life goes on and you get into situations and things get hard, it's easy to naturally flow back into what you are used to, what you're comfortable with, and what you've learned. So I reread books like these to help me. And I truly do believe that it is a guide to personal freedom. You know, we say we want to be free. Freedom does come with having money, where you get choices and options. But freedom of your mind, where you're not holding on to so many things, is the true peace and true freedom. On top, plus having an abundance of money as well. But when you have the freedom of your mind, you all, it is just so impactful. It has truly changed my life, where naturally, I'm human. I do take things personally, but I am knowledgeable enough at this time where I know that if someone does say something out of anger towards me, that they're truly just projecting, and it's something that they have going on internally, and it doesn't have my name on it. And so I would highly recommend the 4 agreements. Wild Goose Chase is the 3rd book that I would recommend. I actually have not read this book in a very long time. I read this at a very pivotal point in my life. I read this back in, it would have been 11 years ago when I first started therapy. One of my teachers, colleagues that I was teaching with, I was a classroom teacher, her husband actually gave me this book. So we had traveled to Italy together. And after our Italy trip, during the trip, we had an opportunity to get to know each other. He's one of those gentlemen that they don't have any children, the couple, but he's a Dale Carnegie instructor. So like he truly has a lot of things going on. And so when he gifted me this book, I wasn't sure what it was about. Wild Goose Chase, Reclaiming the Adventure of Pursuing God. And so it is Christian based. So if you're not, that's okay. There are still gems in this book. I would highly recommend it. It really talks about, you know, when you think of a wild goose chase, you think of running around or just doing things that aren't aligned with your heart. And this book truly will get you centered, where you will be more aligned. Like I said, it is Christian based, but it even talks about just like living dangerously. Like God didn't send us here to just live a boring life. In the book, it says, what is it that you want? It talks about what are your goals? What are your values? What are your passions? And so sometimes people have a difficult time. And I think I was in that space. And that's why he gifted me this book, where I was figuring out what was most important to me and what I valued and what meant the most to me. I knew that I loved teaching, but I was also struggling with taking care of my mother, who had a serious mental illness, and it would make me very sad. And I have a chip on my shoulder when it comes to my mom's illness. We all healing, okay? We all working on ourselves, but it is something that's very sensitive for me. And in this particular book, The Wild Goose Chase, it talks about those things that make you extremely sad, or those things that you feel passionately about, like you know you're going to tell somebody this is what it is, those are the things that God is probably calling you, and that is your passion, and you may need to lead work in those areas. As someone who is very sensitive and a crier, I can feel sadness about a lot of things. So I'm often on this journey. I like to call myself multi-passionate, but I would highly recommend Wild Goose Chase. Do not deter from it if you're not Christian. There are some true gems in this book, and I would highly recommend it. Number 3. All right. Number 4, a little fun. You are a badass. How to stop doubting your greatness and start living an awesome life. It's really bright. When you read it, Jen Sincero, like, she's the bomb. You've seen her book. I know you have. Somewhere in Target, in Walmart. Chapter 11, I just happened to open up to this. She says, your brain is your bitch. Okay? Like, mind is the master power that molds and makes, and man is mine, and evermore he takes. The tool of thought in shaping what he wills brings forth 1,000 joys, 1,000 ills. He thinks in secret, and it comes to pass. Environment is but a looking glass. That's by James Allen, and she quoted that at the beginning of chapter 11, because your thoughts are powerful, and that is what this book taught me. I read this book, it had to been 2014, y'all, so 8 years ago or so, but you can see it has writing all over my children. But you are a badass, and I love this book, although it's fun and light, and she does use profanity. I happen to like profanity, so it doesn't offend me. But with this book, I took a lot of the gems out of the book, where I wrote them on sticky notes, and I put them on a poster board, and I put them in my room so that I would read them consistently. Asking yourself why, she talks about. I'm one of those people that's often thinking of something that happened in the past, or too busy thinking in the future. And in the book, Jen says, we're on a planet that somehow knows how to rotate on its axis. A planet of 8 billion people that somehow knows how to rotate on its axis and follow a defined path while it hurtles through space. Our hearts beat, we can see, we have love, laughter, language, living rooms, computers, compassion, cars, fire, fingernails, flowers, music, medicine, mountains, muffins. We live in a limitless universe overflowing with miracles. The fact that we aren't stumbling around in an inconsolable state of sobbing awe is appalling. The universe must be like, what more do I have to do to wake these bitches up? Make water, their most precious resource, rain down from the sky? I laugh at that paragraph all the time, because it taught me, or helped me, to focus on gratitude. We have to be grateful. I think that that's a really big piece, and this book really helped me manifest flowing in gratitude, and then manifesting more of the things that I want, and making lists of those things that I want, and reading them, and being consistent and focusing on what I want and not what I don't want. And I want to go back to gratitude. Gratitude is huge. You know, although she makes a joke of it, but it's like, it's so serious. It's so true, because literally we live in this planet that is huge, and it rotates. Our heart is beating right now. You can hear me. You have ears. You can hear me. You can see me. That is amazing. And so when things get really difficult, you all, this book is fun, and it reminds me to focus on gratitude, and that I am in control of my life. So tons of gems in here. You are a badass. How to stop doubting your greatness and start living an awesome life. That is book number 4. Number 5. Okay, number 5. What happened to you? Conversations on trauma, resilience, and healing. This is by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. So Dr. Bruce Perry is a psychiatrist, psychologist. I will tell you later, put it in the document below. But this book, it truly talks about the science of our brains and what happens when we experience trauma, and how we can heal ourselves, and we're resilient people. Something that really stood out in this book, and it was really near and dear to my heart, was, and it makes me a little bit emotional, but I often think about those that have come before me, that lived through Jim Crow and civil rights and being enslaved before then, right? How did we heal ourselves? And in the book, Dr. Bruce Perry, a white man, talks about how indigenous people would dance, how indigenous people gathered in their communities and in their groups and in their tribes. And that is how they healed. And it just reminded me, this book helped remind me to be centered and in the moment with the community that I do have. And so, yes, I love my babies, I love my husband. And sometimes it's calling up my girlfriends and saying, hey, can we hang out? Or they may call me, or visiting with my cousins, because that communal time, that community time, you all, is healing. When we dancing and we twerking and we dancing and we twerking, it is healing. It is healing. I cannot stress it enough. And so to read the science behind it really, it just made me emotional, because our ancestors didn't always have the same, our ancestors did not have the same tools that we currently have today. And so not only is it a reminder of me to give thanks for those that came before me, it's a reminder that I can do the simple things to also heal myself. Yes, I'm going to pay for therapy. Yes, I'm paying for books. But what were those indigenous people doing prior to read about that? The science of it, it was amazing for me. Another piece of this book that really took my breath away when it comes to trauma, I'm someone who values herself on being smart, right? I have a master's degree. I passed my real estate exam the first time. Whatever. Okay, I like to read. I think I'm smart. But when it came to relationships, you all, I would be repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And then I would beat myself up and feeling like I was stupid. I was like, what is wrong with me? And it was this book that Dr. Bruce Perry, he talks about, he says, there's nothing wrong with you, but due to your trauma, sometimes our brain stays in that space and we repeat things because we have not unlearned it to learn something new. Baby, the healing work is in these books. I want you to go to therapy too, because sometimes you need a jump start, okay? But Oprah and Dr. Perry, they got a thing in this one. If you like science and you want to know the facts behind certain things, this is one of those. Okay, you're a badass, more fluffy. I mean, she brings some facts too, but it's more fluffy. This is definitely God-centered. This is definitely more practical, spiritual, getting you to look outside of the box for the 4 agreements. And set boundaries, no peace, I would say, is probably like more of a combination of all. But she's a true leader in her field. I love all of her work. You may have seen her Instagram page. She always dropping nuggets. But those are the 5 books that I would recommend. If I had to encourage you to do anything, even if it's not one of those 5 books, I just encourage you to read something that does speak to your need, okay? Because all of our needs and desires are different. And even if that's just reading, like I used to love reading The Coldest Winter Ever, Fly Girl, Black novels, Black fiction. If that's what you need today to get your mind off things, I highly just recommend you reading something, all right? As always, love and light to you. Please subscribe to my channel if you like the content that I'm putting out, or you want to see something more from me. Please let me know. So subscribe, like, comment, share with a friend. And until next time, love and lights.